Welcome back for another AP World History. We're going to take a look at the early modern era and the religious transformations that happened in it. Primarily, this will focus on the Reformation, the Counter-Reformation in Europe, but we will also discuss some of the changes that happened in religions like Islam and in China's Confucianism during this time period as well. So, starting us off, we're going to look at the causes of the Reformation, but maybe before we dive into that, we need to discuss a little bit about what the Reformation was. And what you're going to see is it's a change and a division in the church where the church will break apart in Europe, in at least Catholic Europe or Western Europe. And we're going to have many different churches coming about. So, you might be wondering, well, why does this happen? Why does the church break up? And one of the major causes for this is the corruption within the church. The church has been kind of rotting from the inside for a while now, and it's through a practice of simony, which is the buying of offices, and so you have in some areas very incompetent people becoming priests or even higher levels of bishops, and you have people buying even the Pope or the office for Pope, and so people are looking at that as this isn't right, and this isn't what should be happening in here. Our religion shouldn't be driven by money and things like that, and so you have an issue there. Along with that, there's a practice of selling something known as an indulgence, which is a little slip of paper that will forgive you for your sins that you've done, and you can buy it for a few coins, and these coins go back to the church to build new churches or fuel the Pope's spending on certain things, and so. This causes a problem, and it makes people question, well, why is the Pope using our money this way? And really, am I forgiven for my sins for this? Can this actually happen? And so that's going to lead to some problems. Along with that, a new invention has come about known as the printing press, and this allows for information to be spread quicker and more rapidly than any time previously. I would equate it to kind of like the internet today. Now, obviously, it wasn't as fast as the internet, but the idea that you can reprint a pamphlet or a statement over and over and over again and spread it quickly throughout the countryside before someone can really react to it fully really allowed for the Reformation to take place. Because previously some groups had tried to, like a guy named John Huss, and John Wycliffe had tried to reform the church. However, they could not get a wide enough audience, and their messages were squandered or put down in the areas of where they preached them. So the printing press will allow, who we'll see eventually as Martin Luther, come out and send his message out, questioning the church, to a large audience in his region of Germany, but also would spread out to the rest of Germany and to all of Europe. Along with this, we just have the normal divisions in Europe, and the churches are part of that division, that the Germans want to be kind of their own thing and not be necessarily tied to Italy, or the French want their own thing, or just depends on where you're at and what they'd want, okay, and how their culture is. So, the Reformers. The big name that usually gets associated with this is a guy named Martin Luther, but you also have a guy named John Calvin. These are the two main guys. We also put Henry VIII, should be Henry VIII up there, because he does create a new church in England. However, whether it's an actual reform or anything like that, or for religious reasons, is a whole other question. But Luther being the most prominent one, he questions the church, posts 95 Theses up on the church door at Wittenberg, and this kind of kicks off, or this is the main kickoff of the Reformation. He argues that indulgences and what the Pope says doesn't save people. Instead, you are saved by your faith alone, and that everyone is equal. And this will lead to the creation of the Lutheran Church, which will primarily be in Germany and in Scandinavia. Then you have John Calvin. He is in Switzerland, and he preaches an idea called predestination, which says that everything you're going to do in your life has already been determined. There isn't really any free will, and this is a concept that Christians really wrestle with, as to what kind of free will do you have, and do you actually make your decisions, or is everything already known, and so the outcome of your life is already done. And so we get that from here. And the church that he establishes is known as the Presbyterian Church. And then you have Henry VIII, who really just wanted to divorce his wife and gain more control of the church and have control over it instead of the Pope having control over it. And so he creates his church, which is headed up under the king or the monarch. And we know this church as the Anglican Church. And so these are the three major churches that will come about from this. But these will lead to new groups breaking off of them. For example, from Calvin, we'll also get Baptists and Anabaptists, and the church divisions will continue, and you can even see them continuing to today with all the different denominations that we have. Now, what are the effects of this? Well, first off, the church is divided. Now, the one thing that was united all of Europe is gone. And so that's a major issue there. And because of this, it's going to lead to fighting, and lots of fighting, and lots of death. For example, the biggest war that happens at this time is known as the 30 Years' War, which is the war between the German princes and the Holy Roman Empire, and King Louis XIV gets involved in this. Denmark and Sweden and almost every major country gets involved in this in Europe. And it leads to about 15 to 30% of the German population dying. And it won't be solved until the Treaty of Westphalia, which then says the German princes can choose what religion they want for their region. At the same time this is going on, you have a group known as the Huguenots in France that are heavily persecuted by the French monarch, and that won't be resolved until the Edict of Nantes, allowing them to have a little bit of freedom of religion. We also have other conflicts like the English-Spanish conflict, which will lead to the Spanish Armada going and trying to take on England, and will get destroyed by a few burning ships while they're in harbor, and then a storm in the English Isles, which they weren't prepared for. And this will also lead, though, to the Catholic Church reassessing themselves, or looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, okay, you know what, they have some real critiques. They are right on some things. Let's try to fix some things. So they try to work on limiting corruption and getting rid of the corruption in the church. They will censor books and educate their priests better so that they know what they're doing. And the censoring books we'll see happen a lot with the scientific revolution, with them trying to cut those things out, or at least the ideas that they don't agree with, so that everyone's united under their ideas. And it will also lead to the establishment of the Jesuit order in the Catholic Church, and these are going to be major missionaries. Their first goal is to go back throughout Europe and convert people that converted to one of the Protestant churches back to Catholicism. But then they will be used heavily to go into newly conquered territories, like in the Americas and to China and across the world, to spread Christianity and try to convince people to convert to Christianity. And so we'll see this spread happen mainly by the Jesuits in the Catholic Church. And really it's the Catholic Church that really tries to spread beyond its borders. The Protestant churches don't focus so much on this. In the Americas, like if we talk about the Puritans, they don't really try to convert the Native Americans to their religion. Instead, they focus on themselves and not bringing more people into it. While on the flip side, the Catholics really focus on converting people. And so in Central America and South America and the Caribbean, they are forced to follow Christianity. And in the Philippines, the same thing is going to happen. Now, the people will eventually get kind of on board with this, but what we're going to have is a mixing of cultures. And so you get this idea of the Virgin of Guadalupe, who kind of takes the place of Mary. And you get these huacas, which were these spirits of the Mesoamericans and South Americans that will then be transformed into saints or be linked to a certain saint. And so it allows an easier transition. At the same time, when slaves are brought over from Africa, they're also going to be converted to Christianity, but they're going to mesh some of their things. And so they might become Christians, but then we also get a mixing, and so we get voodoo and Santeria and some of these other ideas that mix those African spirituality traits in as well. And then in the spread of Christianity beyond the colonies to areas like China and India, where the Europeans don't have significant control, really nothing much happens. Instead, what happens is they really spread the technology and the new scientific ideas that will come out of the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment to these areas, which they like a lot more than trying to be forced to follow a religion that they don't have any interest in believing, because they already have established religions of Confucianism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. Now, outside of Europe, with religions, we have in Islam, the religion is spreading, and it's through the Sufi clerics instead of a military conquest. There aren't many more conquests going on in the Muslim world. Instead, it's through Sufis or merchants and other travelers. But also a new movement comes about called Wahhabism, and it's a very conservative movement saying that we got to get rid of some of these more liberal ideas in the church and come back to the base of what Islam really is. And this will become actually kind of the basis for modern Saudi Arabia. Is they follow this advice, these ideas of Wahhabi, and so if you look at Saudi Arabia today, a lot of their culture is based off of those ideas. In India, we have the development of Sikhism, which combined Hinduism and Islam, and we also have Bhakti, which breaks off of Hinduism a little bit, and saying that you need to experience God and come together through songs and dance, and that there is no caste system and everyone's equal. In China, there isn't anything really drastic. However, Wang Yangming says that individuals can reach their enlightenment at home. They don't necessarily have to go to a monastery or do anything super special. And you have Cao Zhang saying for Confucianism that new ideas that come up, and how we're going to solve things and solve problems, we need to actually have evidence and research it and understand it better than just saying, oh, this is what's happened in the past and we're going to do this. And so these are some of the changes. Again, these aren't as drastic as what we see happening in Europe at this time, and they will have long-lasting effects, as you can see with the Wahhabi. Still influences some Muslim countries today, especially Saudi Arabia, but they're not as impacting as we'll see the Reformation is on the scientific revolution and Enlightenment.